Harvest Bank is a proud sponsor for today's Fresco El Podcast.
Hey friends, I'm Luis Padilla and welcome to another episode of Fresco El Podcast. And today we have a very special guest, a dedicated and visionary community leader, an advocate for positive change in our community, and a good friend to many, John Fierro. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm excited. This is my first podcast interview, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes.
Yeah, no, it will be great. And President and CEO of Mattie Rhodes, and we're gonna talk about that as we go. But yeah, thank you for taking the time to be here. I know that you are pretty busy with your schedule.
Never too busy for Fresco marketing. So thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. So John, let's start. Like this, off air of recording. I was telling you, just like we're gonna have a very casual, relaxed conversation. We want to know more about John as a person, your personal experiences, and so just tell us a little bit more about you, like where you grew up, how was growing up in Kansas City, and all that.
Sure. So I grew up here in Kansas City, so primarily in the Westside neighborhood. So my parents, both of them Mexicanos. My dad moved to Kansas City after the Korean War, and he was originally from Marfa, Texas, and met my mom through an aunt of his. My mom and his aunt worked together here in Kansas City, and my mom was born here in Kansas City, Kansas, but was raised in San Francisco de Rincon, Guanajuato, and then came back to the United States as a young lady and met my dad, and they got married and they had 4 children. I'm the youngest of 4, and pretty much grew up in the Northeast area as well as the West Side. Most of my time in the West Side, growing up in the neighborhood and going to high school at Westport High, etc. So I'm a Kansas City boy.
Yeah, and makes sense that now that you serve both communities, right? Where you
Correct.
grew up and where you at the West Side.
That's
and
right.
Northeast,
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I do have ties to both neighborhoods.
Yeah. So how growing up on those, so the years after growing up in those neighborhoods influence your passion for community work?
Well, I think it was just the environment that I grew up in. My dad, we were very fortunate. He worked all the time. He was a blue collar worker. My mom stayed at home. Was always about go to school, graduate from high school. And in the neighborhood at the time when I grew up in the West Side, a lot of support and a lot of activities that I participated in were organized by the Guadalupe Center. So that's, you played baseball in the summer, you played flag football in the fall, and you played basketball in the winter. And in between, you would go to the center and have fun. And then as you grew up, that's where you went and worked as a teenager. And my family, we lived in public housing. So in the West Side neighborhood, when I was growing up, which was back in the late 70s, early 1980s, there were 2 public housing developments in the community. One was called West Bluff, where I grew up close to, as you are going down Cesar Chavez Avenue to the west and heading towards Kemperina. I grew up there, and then the second development was West Pinway. And so really growing up in the neighborhood really shaped my future, in that while we never went hungry, we didn't have a whole lot. And it was very much about staying in the community. You didn't venture off past 31st Street on the south. You just pretty much stayed in the neighborhood. And when I turned 19, shortly after graduating from high school, I became a dad. And so that really shaped my future, in which my son John was born and was going to college at UMKC. But quite frankly, the priority was I have to get a job. Right. And so I didn't go through the traditional route of going to college for 4 years, graduating, and kind of starting my career. I instead, was there at UMKC for about a year and a half, and then I went to work full time, and it was actually working at Guadalupe Center, and really giving me an opportunity not only to earn money, but to really learn more about the needs of the community and developing relationships. And I think for me, just the people that I've met over the years and just finding ways to work with them and to respond to community needs, that was my calling. While that was not what I had planned in high school, it's just that's where the dear Lord put me.
Right. Yeah. And so what exactly did you plan in high school? What were you thinking being when you were younger?
My plan was graduate from high school, attend college, get my college degree, get a job, start a career, move, have the traditional American life that you see on TV, the nice little house with the white picket fence, and that's not what happened. So,
well, you're doing great. And
I am. I'm very blessed. The challenges and the opportunities that have been presented to me. My wife and I are very much guided by our faith in God, and somos católicos, and we truly believe in the higher spirit and the protection of the Virgen de Guadalupe. And I truly believe that everything that I have experienced is planned, has been part of a bigger plan.
Right. We've been talking with other guests in this podcast how it seems like we all have a different idea or a different plan growing up, but then we experience these other things in life that start shaping the way that we the way that we start going, or the different directions that we start going and growing in our life. And yeah, I also believe that sometimes and most of the time it's for a reason. Things
Correct.
happen for a reason, right? And now that you serve in these communities, very important communities for the city and the Latinos and the minorities. So yeah, I think things happen for a reason, and that's why you're in this position that you are today.
No, they are. Yeah, and it's been a great experience, and I've been able to work with a lot of great people and meet new people like you and Alexis, and community work. There's never a dull moment. There's always something going on. There's always a purpose that to guide your work, and I think for me, it's really the relationships. I really enjoy meeting people and interacting with people, and just really generate my energy from others.
So I want to ask something about you growing up. So in these neighborhoods, what was the favorite thing, John, at 12 to 15 or 10 to 15? What was your favorite thing to do?
For us, I go back to we didn't go hungry, but we didn't have a lot, and so in terms of what you did when you weren't in school, a lot of it was sports, and so for a lot of the kids in the Westside neighborhood, we were very fortunate to have a gentleman by the name of Tony Aguirre. And Tony, when he was younger, was a very, very good athlete. He was a good baseball player, basketball player. In fact, as I understand, his baseball skills, the former Major League Baseball team, St. Louis Browns, I think had either drafted him or had expressed an interest in him playing. And so Tony was very connected with the Guadalupe Center. And I'd say easily for 3 decades, he was the athletic director, he was the coach. And so those sports that I referenced earlier, baseball in the summer, basketball in the winter, etc., he was my coach and he was everybody's coach. And that's what you did. And Tony was just, he was a good man. He was very patient, always had a smile on his face. He taught us young men how to be respectful to women. And I credit that to growing up, that there was never a time where I didn't have anywhere to go. And so that combined with my own parents and my dad, I always tell people my dad was very patient, always had a smile on his face. And I really feel that his patience and his work ethic, that was the discipline for me. That's what provided me with a strong direction of just, you know what, you respect others, you work hard, and you do the best that you can. So those are some of the things that kept me involved during that age period.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have to confess that I didn't know that Tony Aguirre was, because now we have the center Tony Aguirre.
Oh yes,
and on his name, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't know that he was. I thought he was early years, but
no, he was. He is a significant leader in the Hispanic community, and the center. That is the least that we as a city could do for him, because he did so much for kids. And and think about it, he had a full-time job and had a family, and he would come down every afternoon, and he'd spend at least 3 or 4 evenings a week working with us kids. So the amount of time that he was taken away from his own family is tremendous.
Right. And that's why it's so important that and I know you do in Mattie Rhodes and Guadalupe Centers and others, but sometimes I feel like, and because I was involved in youth soccer, as you know, and I feel like there's a little bit more that we can do, right? And others can support these organizations, as Mattie Rhodes, that have sports programs to serve a larger community, or a bigger group. Because when I was in youth soccer, I feel like these sports change a kid's life. Like growing up, I mean, it did to myself. If it wasn't because of soccer, I wouldn't be in the United States. I came with a soccer scholarship, but I feel like there's always something more that we can do, and partner up with others and get sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So what do you see that is the challenge? For example, with Mattie Rhodes, you're trying to do all these sports programs to help the community.
I think I would say we haven't really had much of a challenge, because we're kind of, I believe, in our history, the early stages of expanding our sports program. We're pretty fortunate that we have partnered the last 10 years with the U.S. Soccer Foundation, and they are using soccer as a way to improve health amongst boys and girls in kindergarten through 8th grade. And so we've had a really good partnership with them, and we probably work with over 500 youth a year. I think the opportunity, I would say, is to really expand beyond that. And so I see the challenge being recruiting coaches and then compensating them. We have quite a few coaches, soccer coaches, that just like Tony are spending, hours after hours away from their own family, after their own jobs, teaching kids how to play soccer, coaching them, transporting them, taking them home. And they don't always get paid. Right. And it's because of their commitment to work with these kids, and those kids that can't afford to pay, they're finding ways to give them opportunity to participate and not turning them away because they don't have the money to pay. Right. So, for us, I think we're still very new into the sports area, but yeah, I would say, the challenges to come are just making sure that we identify resources to compensate some of these volunteers.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, I think that was the biggest challenge that I experienced too, because so when I coached for 3 years, and it was, like you say, it was all, I was donating my time, and I did it because I like it, but in the long term, it's not sustainable, because, at some point I needed to get a job, right?
Correct. Correct. And and you really become, another parent, another mentor to these kids. I remember early on in my career, I coached baseball and flag football, and I enjoyed it. I mean, to really work with these kids to make sure that they are not going down a different path, and then just the whole competitive nature, and to see them go out on the field, and when they put it all together, and then they either score, hit a home run, score a touchdown. It's pretty exciting, and but then there's those times too where it's like, okay, well, I'm dropping somebody off, and mom and dad ain't home, and it's like, well, I can't leave them here by themselves.
Right.
Or it's like, well, I didn't get a chance to wash my uniform. Okay, let's get you another uniform so you can play.
Right. Yeah. Definitely, the coach always takes a higher role than just being a coach.
Correct.
Right? So yeah, definitely. Like when I did it, I enjoy it. I love it. I wish I can do it again, but like I say, sometimes it's hard because you need to find other ways to work and to make money and to keep going. But,
correct.
So let's go back to so the early years. You start working at Guadalupe Center. How was that? What were you doing?
I was my first role at Guadalupe Center as a full-time employee was they had just opened a daycare, which probably had been open, I'm going to say maybe 5 years before I went to work there. And it was called Plaza de Niños, and it still exists. It's a much bigger and, institution that they still manage. And my first job was as a full-time teacher's aide. So mind you, I was all of 20 years old, having to wake up at 6:30 in the morning to get to the daycare on time to open the door so that when the parents were bringing their kids, we were open.
Right.
And so it was a good experience. So I did that for about 9 months, and then I never forget, just in interacting with the coworker, I happened to be during my lunch in one of the rooms, and I was typing on a typewriter. I don't know what I was typing, and the individual said, "Oh, you know how to type?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I know how to type. I know how to do a little bit more things." And so that opened a door for another role within the agency. So I became the community affairs coordinator, and would end up in that role for probably a good 6 years. In fact, when I left, I was the director of community affairs, and the things that I was responsible for with other team members were community crime prevention, organized adult recreation, so softball, volleyball programs. I was also involved in a policy position. So there would be times I would go with the director to the state capitol, and at that time, the state legislator wanted to enact English-only legislation. So we'd go down there and testify and oppose that, come back, be interviewed on the news, and then just organized a number of special programs for the neighborhood, promoting the free paint program, helping people to get their house fixed. And so I did that for about a 6-year period, and that has become the foundation from which I have, continued to operate from. It's about relationships, it's about leveraging other resources, but it's being true to what the community wants. And it was a great experience, and I just think without that I probably wouldn't be where I'm at. But those were my first 6 years working at Guadalupe Center.
And so I was going to ask you, like, what skills from your previous roles you think have been most valuable to the role that you doing right now at Mattie Rhodes?
I think one, never forgetting what the community wants. I'm much older now, and obviously there have been times where okay, well, maybe I'll just make this decision. And then it comes back, well, wait a minute, I probably should have talked to a few more people, whether that were residents, students, or whatever. But I think the biggest thing that I learned and try to maintain from that experience is whatever I'm doing needs to really be connected to what the community wants. To come and, and try to say, well, this is what I think you need. Well, that's not going to be beneficial. So that was very helpful. And then after I left the center, then going back and getting my higher education. So finishing up my undergraduate work at Penn Valley and then eventually going off and, building upon that. So certainly the higher education, along with just strong people skills and relationships, have really been beneficial in what I've been able to be a part of.
Right. And so you left the center after 6 years to go back to school, but did you?
So I continued to work. So I was actually at the center for a total about 7 years, and after I left, I went and I was the initial executive director of the Hispanic Economic Development Corporation. So most people know it as HEDC. So when it first opened, I was the first executive director, and I was there for a few years. And that was it was a good experience, but as I reflect back, probably wasn't ready for the role, then went on and went back to school while working full time. I worked for the Kansas City Public Schools, and once I secured my undergraduate degree, I then went to work at Mattie Rhodes, and I was hired to be the first full-time fundraising director. And so in my mind, I thought, well, I just got my bachelor's degree. I'll go back to school in the evening and get a master's degree, and I'll probably work here 3 years and I'll leave. And well, 3 years obviously has turned into over 25 years. But I was very fortunate to have the support of my predecessor, which is a good friend, Mary Lou Jaramillo, who hired me to allow me to go to graduate school. And then after being the fundraising director, probably after about maybe 4 or 5 years, I pursued another graduate degree and was able to accomplish that. So, yeah, it's I don't think I've ever been off work maybe more than a week in the last 38 years.
So you went from Guadalupe Centers to Hispanic Development Fund.
Correct.
And you started there for how many years?
So I was it was Hispanic Economic Development Corporation. Yeah, I was there for probably about 2.5 years. And then I went on to the Kansas City Public Schools, where I worked 2.5 years. So those two experiences were probably the shortest tenures that I've had in my career. And how was Mattie Rhodes when you started? I mean, 25 years plus ago. So Mattie Rhodes was a very small organization. I was familiar with it growing up in the Westside neighborhood. And, I knew that they worked with, school-age kids and worked a lot with the public housing families in the Westside. I was aware of their counseling services, and that was kind of my familiarity with them. And then the Art Center, which when I was growing up, it was known as the Craft Learning Center. So when I arrived, we probably had about 10 employees. We worked out of the Art Center, which still exists, which is a house on West 17th Street. And then we had the Counseling Center, which we no longer own, at 1740 Jefferson Street. But it was a very small staff, and we primarily were focused on mental health services and visual arts. And but it was while there were only 10 of us, the environment, the culture was very much centered on what do the participants need. And it was never any type of judgmental services of, well, this is what they need and we're going to give it to them. No, it was very much of, okay, understanding what the kids needed, understanding what the parents wanted, and then working with them to help them secure the skill sets, the resources they needed for them to be self-sufficient. And so it was a very early on. I mean, it was a very special place that I, certainly was fortunate enough to be a part of.
Yeah. And what was your first position?
So the first position I had was fundraising.
Okay.
So when I was hired, the agency, go back to my predecessor, Mary Lou. She, I never forget when I was interviewed with her and one of our former board presidents. I think she asked me a question, or the board president asked me a question like, "Well, why do you want to work here?" And why are you here?
Yeah.
And I remember saying, I said, well, I've always been aware of Mattie Rhodes, and I've always seen it as this little well-kept secret up on the hill, because the counseling center where I would work was on top of the hill at 1740 Jefferson Street. And I said, I feel like you all are in a position to take this leap of faith and grow. And I never forget the response of the board president. She said, that's exactly what we want to do. And so really that was my mindset. While I certainly had experience in developing programs, implementing them, interacting with the community, this was my first formal fundraising position. To say I had experience writing proposals or putting together budgets, very little. And so they were taking a chance on me as well. And, I'm still here.
And you've been growing the programming and everything, because you mentioned back in the day they focus on 2 areas. But now, if I'm correct, you have about 7 areas.
Correct. So we've evolved. So today we have about 60 full-time team members. We operate in multiple areas that are aligned with the social determinants of health. So everything from preparing 3- and 4-year-olds for kindergarten, to offering English as a second language program in the evening, to responding to violence in our community. And doing that by continuing to preserve the foundation of the behavioral health and the visual arts. And so I have a great team. Our staff are very dedicated, work very hard, have a great board. We've always had good volunteers that have provided the support necessary to keep, responding to the community. We're more regional in focus, having a presence in Clay County. Not only are we still in the Westside, but we've been in the historic Northeast for nearly 20 years.
Right. Yeah. And I know that, like you mentioned, the agency has been growing, and I'm sure there's plans to continue that growth. And like you say, recently you opened an office in Missouri in Clay County.
Correct.
How do you see that growing into that area and that community?
Yeah, well, probably for about the last 50 years, and it really started with the behavioral health services, we have really built a competency to work specifically with the Latino and Spanish-speaking community. Mm-hmm. And so when I think of the Northland, Platte, and Clay County, it is a very young and emerging Latino population. We estimate collectively, there's probably about 25,000 in population, and I think the median age is somewhere around 25. And I really believe that there's an opportunity for Mattie Rhodes to come and help create some gathering opportunities. Certainly, as a country, as a world, we're very mobile. So it's not like when I was growing up where, okay, if you didn't have a car, you really couldn't get anywhere. Well, pretty much everybody has either a car, Uber, Lyft,
right.
A bird, whatever. So it's not like people are isolated, but I do think that there are opportunities like what we have seen in the Westside with our cultural center. People want to come together and they want to celebrate their culture. And have opportunities for fellowship. And I see there's an opportunity to do that in the Northland through the cultural arts. There's a young population. I believe there's an opportunity to work with school-age kids to ensure that they're successful in school. So if that's providing social emotional support, if that's providing academic enrichment, those are the things that we want to respond to. And geographically, it's a much larger area than the urban core. So, the future and the ability to expand is there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think historically it has said that, like the West Side and the Northeast are the communities where the Latino community focus or is. But I think now Kansas City is such a diverse, big city that the Latino community is in other areas as well.
Correct. And I think you see that in the emergence of other organizations and events. You look in Olathe, in the Argentine neighborhood of Kansas City, Kansas, the Northland, whatever. There are a variety of groups, organizations who are organizing, Cinco de Mayo events, putting on dinners to raise money for college scholarships, working with kids. That's fantastic. And that's the way it should be, So we see that definitely people want to come together and to, support the community, and the population has spread out and it continues to grow. That certainly we're nowhere at the point of, it only requires one or two organizations to work with all the Latinos. No, we probably need about another 20 or 30.
Right. Yes. But going back to your career, and this is something that I always ask people because I think it's important. Who have been like mentors or influences in your personal life, in your work life? Because I think the young generations or sometimes not younger generations, but sometimes people don't believe in having a mentor, or or don't know how to get a mentor, or what a mentor is. But have you have this influence in your life that has kind of like helped you?
Yes, I've been very fortunate, and I guess when I think of mentorship or who has set an example for me, I do have to attribute a lot of my work ethic and my personality to my parents. My dad served in the Korean War and worked in the manufacturing industry throughout my whole childhood. And as I said earlier, we never went hungry. We were never, homeless per se, and had all the basics. And what I remember of him, which it has become an example for me, is the job that he worked at. He would his work hours were from 7 a.m. to probably about 3 p.m. He'd wake up like clockwork, I think at 5:30 in the morning, and he'd be ready to go, and he'd leave, and he'd get to work. And I tell people this. I think growing up, I only remember maybe one time my dad was ever stayed home because he just did not feel well.
Right.
But when I look back, that was a huge example to, you know what, you get up, you go to work, and you do what you have to do. And I feel I've taken that and have passed that on to my own kids. And I'm very, proud of them having that same mentality. And then just his patience. I don't think I ever saw him get upset. And then from my mom, patience as well, and perseverance. My mom, didn't speak any English and stayed at home. And I can only imagine what that was like. Well, very isolated from everybody, but she always put us first. And, had some challenges to overcome, and just what she experienced in life and how she overcame it. She was a strong woman. And then, I've been very fortunate when I did start working in the Hispanic community back in the, mid to late 80s. was very fortunate to have met and worked alongside a number of pioneers in our community. And I'll throw out some names that I think some of the younger crowd probably would not know, but we just celebrated the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce conference here in Kansas City. And in preparing for that, obviously, you as a board member and Carlos Gomez, a good friend, as the CEO, in the promotions of this event a few months ago, we reminded, or you all reminded, that the beginnings of that organization were very much tied to Kansas City, Missouri, and a gentleman by the name of Hector Barreto Sr. And I had the great fortune of knowing Mr. Barreto and, interacting with him. And I can't say we worked together on everything, but interacted with him well enough to know, wow, that's the gentleman that helped to found this national organization that has interacted with presidents and U.S. senators and has really become a go-to organization for leadership in this country to invest resources for our population. So he was tremendous. Manny Lopez, who owned Manny's, who founded Manny's. I mean, he was smart, good, strong businessman, great personality, very, quick on his feet. I remember being in a meeting with, I think, him and one of the mayors, and he didn't have any problem holding back and being direct and to the point. Another pioneer, Ana Riojas, who she was just amazing. I remember this was in the late, maybe 80s, early 90s, and she founded Able Employment. And I believe she had a background in state government in Kansas. And, at times when we think about, women role models in our country, you talk about a Hillary Clinton, a Michelle Obama. These are very highly educated, smart, articulate women. Ana Riojas was all of that. And this was back in, again, the late 80s, early 90s, and a very successful businesswoman. And, and I do want to also acknowledge a few other people that I work with. I referenced that my first opportunity was at the Guadalupe Center. The longtime executive director of the center, Chris Medina, was the one that hired me. I never forget when I said to him, I said, well, I'm not going to be able to continue to go to college. I'm going to be a dad. I got to work. And he said, well, you know what? You stay in school and we'll find something here. And that's how I got my start. And so I was very fortunate to have worked with him for those 7 years and obviously seeing what he was able to establish with the charter school system, the daycare system. And and then I also mentioned Mary Lou Jaramillo. Mary Lou, very successful in the nonprofit sector, and consider her a friend. But yeah, I think back to your question of role models and mentors, just having the experience of working alongside those individuals who I consider as pioneers for the Latino community has definitely benefited me and my leadership.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so what would you advise the younger generation or the young professionals that, they're in this moment in their careers, or either in their careers or starting a business or in the middle of the business, what would be your advice to tell them how to connect with a mentor, or how to find a mentor, or what to do?
Sure. I think, first of all, never let anybody set limits. Oh, well, you can't do that, or why would you want to do that? That's something for somebody else to do. I think for me, my biggest advice, and I share this with my own kids and grandkids and younger team members that we have at Mattie Rhodes, don't let anybody tell you no or set a limit. in my mind, if you have aspirations to change the world, to take on an initiative in the community, then go for it. I think we have a number of tremendous current leaders that foster that type of environment. I mentioned Carlos earlier, Gomez, the president and CEO of the Hispanic Chamber. Carlos is a really good mentor, and I've heard that from a number of young people. And clearly, when you see some of the participants or leadership of the chamber, they'll reference, "Oh, I met Carlos when I was in high school, and I was a part of the collaborative, and now I'm on the board." And so I think reaching out to someone like him. Reaching out to the religious entities. There are a number of, churches, regardless of the denomination, that is always looking for young people who want to help volunteer, who can help to engage other young people in those religious entities. And so, and obviously grade schools, et cetera, is another place to volunteer. But certainly there is enough out there that I don't think there's a shortage for individuals who want to get involved with the community. So, and I put myself out there as well. If there's anybody that's listening that would love to get involved, give me a call. And
yeah, I know for personal experience that you are a good friend, and you also available, to we can ask you questions, we can rely on your experience, and you're always open to help others. And sometimes I say that, like people think that getting a mentor is like a formal relationship where you put it on your schedule and you meet once a month and you go that coffee. And sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes it's just being, if you have something going on, you ask people that you trust and people is willing to help, and you call them or you text them or you invite them to a coffee. But it doesn't have to be like super formal, right? It's more about like the relationship and just being open to talk to somebody.
Correct. And I just want to say, thank you. And the feeling's mutual. I met you and Alexis, I think probably about 2+ years ago. And I consider both of you good friends. And professionally, you guys are very successful. And we've obviously, between Mattie Rhodes and Fresco, have worked together. But as friends, I'm hoping to be as good of a golfer as Alexis, and certainly enjoy hanging out with you. But no, and I think also I like how you frame the mentorship. It's not so formal. It's really about really just getting to know one another and being open and listening and not being judgmental. And I would say, my friendship with you and Alexis and working relationship, while you all are at a different part of your career, I'm learning from you guys. I mean, you guys have grown up in a whole different generation than what I grew up, and that is who I need to be responsive to in terms of the technology, in terms of inviting input, and not thinking in an older person's way of thinking. Now that I'm older, but I was having this conversation with somebody. I said, growing up, the adults typically told the kids, go outside, we're talking about something important. And that's how I was as a parent. But now recognizing that young people are so they have access to so much information.
Right.
It's not really good to, mijo, wait until you're 18 and then you can come talk to me about money. Well, no, mijo at 10 years old knows the value of money and knows how to make money.
Right.
Let's have them be a part of the conversation.
Right. No, I appreciate you your words, and yes, I'm Alexis and I feel the same. With you since we met, and yes, it's been a fantastic relationship on working and off work. But I know that you have other meetings, and I don't want to take, because we can continue to talk and keep it for hours and hours. But also something that I know that you founded the Latino Civic Engagement Collaboration. So for people that don't know about this, can you tell us briefly what it is and how was that?
Sure. So to me, it's all about leveraging resources. It's all about collaboration. Clearly, one person, one entity cannot respond to all the community needs.
Right.
And, as they've said, power is in numbers. And the Latino Civic Engagement Collaborative was an initiative that was established probably over 7 years ago. And it involved Mattie Rhodes Center, the Hispanic Chamber, Cabot Clinic, LULAC, HEDC, and the Guadalupe Center. And it was an opportunity at a time where we really needed to go collectively to local government and advocate for resources. And in that period of operation, we were able to raise probably over $70,000 to develop or update, in this case, a Hispanic needs assessment. And I believe this was using the 2010 census. And really that document was an opportunity to go and visit with funders to say, we have people that want more mental health services. We still have students who are not excelling to the point of going to college. This was an important resource to really support the work of all the agencies. And so it really was a great experience. And then eventually we all moved on to some other priorities. But I think it really set an example that, we can come together, we can focus on one outcome and be pretty effective. Because those groups that I just mentioned, that is a big part of the power, the leadership in our metro area. Right. When you look at those organizations, to say that a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has been around for 50 years, that Guadalupe Center has been around for more than 100 years. Westside Housing was a part of that group, another long-term organization. And I think, you just look at what each of those groups has accomplished and to know that they still exist, that's power.
Yes.
That's real power.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think the collaboration of all these agencies, that's how we can accomplish more, working together and going in the same direction. So, yeah.
Correct. And I just, would comment to the role of small business and what you have done in terms of helping to facilitate relationships between the corporate sector and nonprofits like a Mattie Rhodes. That's been invaluable. And then also, your leadership serving on the Kansas City, Missouri Planning Commission, you extending your network. And again, finding ways, how do we leverage each other? Because we all kind of run in the same circles, and what we do is very complementary, and that's how we're going to be more successful.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And also, because I was going to mention that you were the first Latino to serve as the president of the boards for Parks and Rec.
Correct.
So, and for many, many years. So, once again, I know that we don't have a lot of time, but can you tell, how was the experience and why it's important that more Latinos are being to be part of these boards and commissions with
Sure.
the city?
Yeah, it was a special honor. I had served on the park board for probably about 3 years, and then was appointed to be the chair. And want to point out, because we've been talking about leadership and mentors, the first Hispanic appointed to the Kansas City, Missouri Parks and Recreation Board of Commissioners, and the park department is more than 130 years old, was Cece Rojas. Okay. And so Cece was appointed to serve on the board. And I remember when she was accepting a position in Washington, D.C., she was going to have to relocate. And I never forget, she reached out to me and said, I'd like to recommend you to replace me on the park board. And, historically, the park board was more influential than the city council was back in the day. You had some of the most prominent Kansas City leaders on that board who were investing monies to build parkway and boulevard systems to build a city. And so for her to be appointed and being Latina, that was huge. That was the first in over 100 years that we've ever had a Hispanic on the park board. And then for her to pay it forward and recommend me to succeed her on the board, that allowed me to gain experience. And then when the new mayor came in, he appointed me as the president. That was huge because we all know, it was just as recent as a little over a year ago when Crispin Raya was elected to the city council. We had gone 30 years, 3 decades without a Hispanic elected to the city council. So imagine the lack of influence, limited amount of influence we had in representation at the city level. So to have been appointed to the park board and to be the president of the park board, I was on a group of 5 individuals, and so I certainly I was in a lot of small rooms with the door closed and gained a lot of good information, met a lot of good people, and have been able to leverage that. And that was huge at that time. Now, it didn't come without challenges because it was the first time that a Latino had been the president of the board. And certainly, that was my first time being in a huge civic position.
Right.
But I was able to fulfill it in the 4 years that I was on, and then after I left because we had a new mayor, the next board president was Latino, and that was John Paul Chauran, and I think that's huge that we were able to demonstrate, Cece, myself, John Paul, what. We as Latinos have the leadership capacity to lead city departments.
Right.
And so, so that was probably one of the best experiences I've had in my life. I will always have a special place in my heart for the park department.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. As you mentioned, I started this year, and it's been a great experience as well. And I look forward to continue and learn, because you learn a lot, right?
You do.
You learn a lot, and like you say, you also move in a different network, so you need to meet new people
Mm-hmm.
and understand how everything works from the city perspective.
Correct. And then, your role is to balance it all out with the community wants one thing, the business community wants another, you have the people that you're working with. And so your role is to understand all of this, balance everything out, and hopefully as a group move in one direction. And but it was definitely a tremendous honor and one that, I've been very fortunate, over the last, I'd say 20 years, each of the different mayors have appointed me to a various board and commission. And then right now, I serve as City Councilman Reyes Payak representative, which is a tremendous honor of helping to recommend how to spend a little under $6 million a year in capital improvements. And so to be able to support him in what he's doing, he is a fantastic leader who we are in very good hands. So he has a bright future, and so I'm thankful that he's in that position.
Yeah. He's gonna be in the podcast as well. So
good.
Yeah. But I know that we don't have much time, right? You
I think we have about another 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just say, to wrap it up a little bit, what are some of the biggest changes that you see in Kansas City that you're excited about?
I would say, the emergence of leaders within our greater Kansas City Latino community. As I shared earlier, you have various individuals that have created their own organizations to, preserve our culture by organizing, Dia de los Muertos celebrations, organizing Cinco de Mayo fiestas. You've had individuals and organizations raising thousands of dollars to establish scholarship funds. You have individuals who are out there advocating and educating the community on various health issues. So that is exciting. That's new energy. That's new ideas and passion, and that's what should happen. And so for me, that's exciting to see all of these individuals at various age levels and professional backgrounds to be involved. Right. That is definitely beneficial to us moving forward into the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's like you say, new energy. That's I think that's the key word that I will say, that there's but the new energy will always relying on these organizations, as Mattie Rhodes, while representing the chamber, that you've been around for so many years and you have all the experience and the knowledge that this new energy can rely on that and keep growing, right? Like I feel like that's how I see it, at least myself. Mm-hmm. I see that can be in the future. That's how the change, or how we can continue to support each other.
Absolutely. And I think the way we do that is engaging some of those individuals to serve as board members, right, or to help encourage them and support them to seek out appointments to boards and commissions, or to run for public office, which, that's another thing that's exciting to see, not only Crispin as the city councilman, but you have Jonathan Duncan, mm-hmm, who's part Mexicano. He's on the city council. You have Manny Abarca, who's the Jackson County legislator. I mean, we have 3 Latinos in an elected position. That's tremendous. Right. And you can do a lot. With them there along with everyone else. But yeah, encouraging other individuals to run. But, it isn't the only way to influence. It is to do all those things that I said earlier of raising money, raising awareness, and just rolling up your sleeve and being a volunteer. That has a tremendous value.
Right. So, John, what legacy do you hope to leave at Mattie Rhodes and the community? I know that you're not retiring anytime soon, but I'm just saying, how do you see that in the future?
I think the first legacy is with my family. I have a very special wife. My wife Loretta. Her and I have been together for 30 years, and I wouldn't be able to do 20% of the things that I do without her support. And so, and then the time that I have taken away from my kids, they've been supportive and they've volunteered. So there's a lot of times you'll see them at events with me or what have you. I would hope that, 20 years from now, they'll be able to say, you know what, we helped my dad in what he was able to accomplish, and we're proud of him, and we're proud of what we did, and we understand why we had to support him and take time away from us. And then I think for Mattie Rhodes, I'm very proud of the opportunity I've had to lead the organization. And, for me, I've always told team members this, it's about ensuring that our Latino community has the resources it needs. And, we're nowhere near where we need to be. So my hope is that people will look back and say, you know what, while John was at Mattie Rhodes, the organization was able to, continue to be in touch with the community. Resources increased. The agency is still financially sustainable and is just going to continue for another 100 years. I think if that were to happen, I will look down and I'll be very pleased.
Yes, well, I'm pretty sure that your family is already very proud of what you have accomplished and what you all doing. And Mattie Rhodes is in the right direction. I mean, you grow from 2 areas to 7 to now having another agency, another office, and another area. So I'm sure, yes, it's you putting all the foundation for another 100 years.
Thank you.
And lastly, John, if you see, with all the experience and all the knowledge that you know now, if you see John on the teenager John, the 15 years old John, what would you tell him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say to him, spend a little bit more time with your mom and dad. And I don't think anybody can see me, but those of you that can see me, it looks like I'm probably going to shed a tear, and that's probably the case. But, I think one of the regrets that I have, and I share this with my wife quite a bit, is, my mom just was a very courageous, strong person. And, while she didn't speak English, I understood what she was saying in Spanish. And when she raised her voice, it was very much from her heart that she wanted the best for me, and she wanted me to do the best that I could. And I think, looking back, I would tell that, young John, you know what? You need to understand how lucky you are, and to have such a strong woman that is your mom, and a dad too, who really set a good example of a hard work ethic. And just I said that earlier. My dad would. Everybody you meet him or who had met my dad and would know him. Oh, Mr. Fierro is such a nice man. He's always got a smile on his face. You know what? I was very lucky. And so, yeah, that's what I need to go and tell that young John, is that you're very lucky to have a mom and dad that you had.
Yeah. Well, that's thank you for sharing that, John. And
You're welcome.
I think we all, yes, if we all have our parents close, you spend more attention, spend more time with them, with our families and friends. So that's a very good advice. And so thank you, John, again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody that is listening or watching this episode. I hope that you enjoy the story, a little bit of John Fierro, President and CEO of Mattie Rhodes, a community leader in our Latino community here in Kansas City. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Arvest Bank is a proud sponsor for today's Fresco El Podcast.